You feel something's off, but you can't quite pin it down. You wake up each day with a sense of disconnection, like you're living a life that isn't yours. Maybe you've tried everything: therapy, self-help books, advice from friends, but that hollow ache remains. A nagging unease, a feeling of being lost, like you're trudging down a path that feels meaningless and doesn't reflect who you are. And do you know why? Because you might actually be on the wrong path. But here's a truth no one tells you that doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you've drifted from your true self. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers on the human psyche, believed each of us is born with an inner map. What he called the soul's map, a profound, invisible guide leading us to our authentic essence. But there's a catch: almost no one learns how to read it. Instead, we're trained from childhood to follow someone else's map, the map of society, family, culture. And before we know it, we're walking paths that pull us further from who we really are. We make choices that don't reflect our nature. We stay in relationships that drain us. We wear masks to fit into places we were never meant to be. Over time, this inner discord turns into pain, into suffering, into apathy. The soul's map isn't some poetic metaphor, it's real. Jung devoted his life to exploring it, charting the deep territories of the human mind, archetypes, the subconscious, the shadow, the ego. And what he uncovered was both terrifying and liberating. Most of our suffering doesn't come from luck or misfortune. It stems from ignoring this map, from living outwardly instead of inwardly, from following imposed molds when we should be heeding the soul's call. If you feel lost, directionless, if you feel like you're sinking even as you try to swim, this video is for you. I won't hand you a magic formula. I'll give you something more powerful, a return to what you already carry within. The truth is, your soul has been speaking to you for a long time, through dreams, through crises, through that uneasy silence. You just haven't learned to listen. Jung saw these feelings of emptiness, failure, confusion as invitations. Invitations to embark on the most important journey of your life: individuation, the process of reconnecting with your true self. So if you're tired of feeling helpless, exhausted from pretending everything's fine while you're breaking inside, know this: you're not alone, and you're certainly not broken. Your suffering isn't a flaw, it's a signal, a call. And if you have the courage to answer, to dive deep and face the unknown within, you'll discover that what seemed like weakness is a gateway, that what looked like darkness is the start of your own light. This video is an invitation. A map in the right hands can change your entire life. The question is, are you ready to unveil it? Imagine a vast, mysterious land within you, filled with symbolic forests, emotional chasms, forgotten peaks of intellect, and underground rivers of desire and fear. Now imagine that this territory can be explored, understood, mapped. That's what Jung offered us through his theory of the soul's map, a true blueprint of the psyche, not built with compasses or satellites, but with dreams, myths, symbols, and human suffering. For Jung, the soul's map isn't a logical, linear structure. It's a living collection of symbols rising from the depths of the subconscious. Unlike what we've been taught, the psyche isn't just a jumble of scattered thoughts. It has structure. It has a center, the ego, a social facade, a persona, a hidden realm of conflict, the shadow and inner figures representing the feminine and masculine within anima and animus. And it's from the tension between these inner forces that our dilemmas, traumas, dreams, and journeys emerge. The ego, the part you think you are, is just the starting point. The ego believes it's in control, but in reality it's like a traveler waking up lost in a forest without a map or compass. That's why so many feel adrift. They make decisions based on this shallow ego, disconnected from the fuller psyche. unaware that deeper forces are at play behind every choice, every obstacle, every impulse. Jung uncovered this by exploring his own dreams and visions, conducting a profound self-analysis. In that dive, he began to see recurring symbolic patterns, universal images appearing in his dreams, his patient's dreams, and across ancient myths, religions, fairy tales, and art. He called them archetypes, the fundamental elements of the soul's map. They're like ancestral landmarks marking key points in the human journey: birth, death, love, loss, rebirth. Each of us walks this path uniquely, yet we all pass through the same gates. But this map isn't just for understanding, it's a process of transformation through individuation, the central journey of Jungian psychology. We're called to stop being a reactive, limited ego and become a whole self, a person living authentically aligned with our deepest nature. This process isn't easy. It involves facing the shadow, breaking from the persona, confronting the subconscious. But it's the only path to a meaningful life. Ignore this map and life becomes a string of mistakes, repetitions, and frustrations. Begin to grasp it even imperfectly, and you'll start to see that every symptom, every crisis, every pain is a message. And that message comes from within. The soul doesn't scream, it whispers. And those who don't learn to hear the soul's whisper will only hear the body's cries. Anxiety, depression, loss of meaning. Now that you understand what this map is, you might wonder, where am I on it? How do I know if I'm on the right path or lost? That's what we'll explore next, dissecting the soul's structure with Jung and recognizing the signs that you've veered off course. If the soul has a map, it also has a framework. Understanding this framework isn't just necessary to locate yourself, it's key to understanding why you're where you are. Carl Jung compared the psyche to a house with many rooms, levels, and hidden corridors. Most people live confined to one room, the ego. Ignoring the vast forces at play in the deeper layers is like trying to navigate the ocean by only looking at the surface. Let's start where everyone begins, the ego. It's the center of your conscious self, the lens through which you believe you see the world. It's essential, but limited. The ego organizes your perception of reality, but it's only a small part of your soul, surrounded by forces it can't control. Beneath it lies the personal, unconscious, holding repressed memories, unresolved traumas, denied desires. Complexes, emotional drivers shaping your behavior without you realizing it. Have you ever felt like you repeat the same mistakes, attract the same kinds of relationships, run from something you can't even name? That's the unconscious personal layer at work. But Jung went deeper. He discovered a universal layer we all share, the collective unconscious. And within this layer reside the archetypes, primordial images structuring our life experiences. No matter where you're born or what era you live in, we all carry the same archetypes: the hero, the mother, the wise old man, the child, the rebel, the lover. These aren't just symbols, they're living forces shaping our desires, choices, fears, and motivations. Between the ego and the self, the organizing core of the entire psyche, lie three key structures directly influencing how you relate to the world and yourself: the persona, the shadow, and the contrasexual archetypes anima and animus. The persona is the social mask you wear to adapt and survive. It's the role you learn to play to be accepted, whether the perfect child, the competent professional, the class clown, or the ideal partner. It's useful, but dangerous, because the more you identify with this mask, the further you drift from your truth. The persona is the outfit your soul wears in public, but it should never be mistaken for your skin. The shadow, by contrast, is everything you hide, deny, or reject within yourself: your flaws, unacceptable desires, anger, jealousy, shame. Yet the shadow also carries hidden potential, suppressed talents, unrecognized strength, stifled creativity. Facing the shadow is painful but necessary. Everything you don't integrate will dominate you. What you reject in yourself, you project onto others. What you hate in them is often what you can't accept in yourself. Then there are anima and animus, inner figures of the opposite gender within us all. For men, anima represents the inner feminine sensitivity, intuition, receptivity, connection to the subconscious. For women, animus embodies the inner masculine reason, action, firmness, direction. These aren't about gender but psychological poles. When ignored, anima and animus manifest distortedly in toxic relationships, destructive idealizations, or emotional rigidity. When integrated, they become bridges to the self, opening the way to a more balanced, creative psyche. At the deepest center of the soul lies the self, your true essence, not what you think you are, but who you really are. The self is wholeness, unity, balance. It's the call to evolve, to individuate, to reconnect with your truth. When you live disconnected from it, you feel fragmented, exhausted, empty. When you approach it, you begin to feel meaning, purpose, direction. The great tragedy of modernity is that we're taught to live outwardly, ignoring all this. We're educated to please, compete, perform, not to feel, integrate, understand. That's why so many live in conflict, trapped in fragile personas, fleeing the shadow, detached from the self, unaware that an unseen war drives every relationship. Now that you grasp your soul's structure, an inevitable question arises: what happens when you ignore all this? What happens when you live only through an ego shaped by a persona, fleeing the shadow, never listening to the self? That's exactly what we'll dive into next. The modern errors, how society has steered us down paths that stray far from the soul, and why this leaves us aching inside. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button and join the channel. Thank you for your support. Have you ever paused to wonder why so many today live anxious, depressed, burned out, even with seemingly successful lives? Why some have it all yet feel empty inside? The answer, per Jung, lies in the fact that most of us aren't living authentic lives but borrowed ones. We follow scripts we didn't write, chase goals we've never questioned, lose ourselves in identities handed to us rather than chosen. Modern society has built a value system that prizes appearances, performance, productivity. From childhood, we're taught to compete, to win, to please others. We're told who we should be, what we should want, how we should act. The result, we craft a socially acceptable persona that drifts further from our true selves. We become experts at performing and amateurs at truly living. This conditioning starts in childhood. We learn that strong emotions are weakness, that mistakes are unacceptable, that showing vulnerability is dangerous. We suppress our shadow to avoid rejection. We stifle creative impulses for fear of being seen as odd. We swap our desires for others' expectations. Gradually, we drift from our center. By the time we notice, we no longer know who we are, only how we appear. In adulthood, this disconnect deepens. The pressure to fit a success mold is relentless: a stable career, a solid relationship, social status, perfect looks. The soul is forgotten, but it doesn't vanish, it just changes how it speaks. When ignored, it screams. And those screams are labeled symptoms: anxiety, existential crises, addiction, mental illness, empty relationships, exhaustion that won't lift with rest. Jung saw these not as failures, but as the soul's alarm warning that we're living out of alignment, disconnected from our inner truth. We live in a world that celebrates extroversion, visibility, exposure. But not everyone is born to be seen. Some are meant to observe, others to create. Some heal, some stay silent and reflect. The problem is that by standardizing the ideal life, modern culture turns unique gifts into obvious flaws. The introvert becomes too shy. Sensitivity turns fragile. Reflection seems slow. In this process, entire archetypes are stifled. The healer is overlooked. The artist is mocked. The mystic is ridiculed. Worse, our society doesn't just ignore the subconscious, it fears it. And what culture fears it wounds. The result? A generation feels broken for not fitting a mold never meant for them. But there's a way out. Jung believed suffering is often the start of healing because it forces us to stop, look inward, and question. In that moment, if we have the courage, we can begin the journey back to the self, what Jung called individuation. This return starts with a simple step, recognizing the signs you've veered off course, symptoms not as failures, but as a compass. Feelings that, if listened to carefully, can point you back to your soul. In the next part, we'll dig into this. What does going off track mean? What are the subtle signs? Emotional symptoms, repeating patterns showing you're drifting from your true self, and how do you start the journey back? Going off track isn't just about bad decisions or external consequences. In Jung's profound view, it's living detached from your essence, your deepest truth. And that always comes with a cost. Your soul knows when you're straying from your center. Even if your mind rationalizes, pretends, or ignores, the signs appear. At first, they're subtle restlessness, unexplained boredom, minor discomforts. But if you deliberately tune out these whispers, the soul starts shouting, and those screams grow loud enough to paralyze your life. The first symptom is often emotional exhaustion that lingers despite rest, an anxiety with no clear cause, fleeting sadness striking when everything seems fine. You might succeed in your career, have stable relationships, keep tidy routines, yet still feel empty, like something inside is dying quietly. Like life is happening outside you and you're just a spectator. Then come repeating patterns, relationships ending the same way, self-sabotage cycles, decisions canceling each other out. You feel like you're circling a maze with someone else's map. This happens because when you drift from yourself, you live under the sway of autonomous complexes, emotional fragments, hijacking your psyche, driving you to repeat the same mistakes even knowing where they lead. It's like watching a movie you know the ending to but can't stop watching. Another strong sign of veering off is an inner sense of inauthenticity. You might maintain an outward normalcy, but inside you feel like you're deceiving yourself. Life loses its color, its passion, its meaning, and the more you distract, busy, or rush, the wider the inner chasm grows. Life loses flavor. Days blur into repetition. All this stems from living outwardly while dying inside. But there's something deeper. When you stray, your dreams shift. They grow more symbolic, intense, unsettling. The subconscious starts sending clear messages that something vital is being ignored. Jung saw dreams as letters from the self. The further you drift, the more urgent the content: images of waterfalls, blocked paths, abandoned houses, shadowy figures. These are symbols of a soul trying to guide you back to your center. But it takes sensitivity to interpret and courage to follow. Why does all this happen? Because yourself, your whole soul, has a purpose to help you become who you truly are. And it won't stop until that happens. Jung called this process individuation, and it's far from comfortable. It's demanding, profound, challenging, requiring you to face everything repressed: your shadow, your fears, hidden desires, forgotten potential. Above all, it demands a plunge into the unknown, into what you aren't yet but could become. So if you feel lost, stuck in old habits, emotionally drained, or living a life that doesn't feel like yours, this is the call. Not a punishment, but an invitation. You're not being punished, you're being awakened. And that's exactly where the next step of this journey lies: how to start walking back to yourself. How to use this soul's map practically to rediscover meaning, reconnect with your essence, and turn pain into direction. In the next part, we'll explore the tools and principles Jung proposed to transform suffering into awareness and disorientation into clarity. So far, you've learned there's a map, that the soul has structure, that society teaches us to ignore it, and that the symptoms you feel are a compass disguised as pain. Now, the inevitable question is, how do you return? How do you find your way back, break free from the persona's surface, and dive into your core? The answer isn't simple. Each person's individuation journey is unique. But Jung left us principles, practices, and symbols as navigational tools. He knew the return to the center couldn't happen through logical reasoning or sheer will, because the issue isn't a problem to solve. It's a soul that needs to be heard. The first tool is observing dreams. Jung believed dreams are the spontaneous expressions of the subconscious symbolic messages sent directly from the self. They reveal hidden truths, unconscious patterns, repressed desires, and even point to direction. But to understand them, you must learn to read their symbolic language. Dreams don't speak in plain words. They use metaphors, images, atmospheres. A collapsing road might signal a crumbling, limiting belief. A wild animal chasing you could symbolize a repressed impulse needing release. Each dream is a unique piece of your map. The second tool is active imagination, a technique Jung developed to dialogue with inner figures. This involves letting subconscious images emerge in a waking state through writing, drawing, visualization, or meditation. It's a way to meet the shadow, the ego, or the self, and understand what they're trying to convey. Active imagination isn't fantasy, it's listening. It's facing the unknown within with presence and courage, creating space for the subconscious to manifest, not as an enemy but as an ally. Another vital path is confronting the shadow. This means looking at what you reject in yourself without judgment, avoidance, or disguise, acknowledging dark impulses, hidden resentments, weaknesses you've even hidden from yourself. But it's also recognizing forgotten talents, stifled desires, untapped potential. The shadow isn't a monster to defeat. It's a part of your soul crying for recognition. Without it, individuation is impossible. Moreover, you must understand the persona's role and consciously dismantle it. Identify the masks you wear at work and relationships on social media, and why they were created. The issue isn't having a persona, we all do. The problem is believing you are it. When you live fused with the mask, the self becomes unreachable. As you start peeling it away, your true nature emerges. And of course, integrating anima and animus is essential. This requires deep inner listening. For men, developing anima means nurturing sensitivity, intuition, and embracing the subconscious. For women, integrating animus involves tapping into deep reason, inner direction, and decisiveness from the center. When these opposites are denied, we project what we lack onto others, creating codependent, imbalanced, or delusional relationships. When integrated, we become whole. Finally, a thread runs through this entire journey: inner silence. We live in an age of constant noise, and it's in silence that the self whispers. Haste is the soul's enemy. Individuation demands stopping presence, solitude, not as escape, but as a spiritual practice. Only in silence can you hear yourself without the world's filters. These methods aren't ready-made recipes, they're doors, tools, keys. Each person must discover their own rhythm, timing, and pace. The only real requirement is the willingness to face yourself deeply, honestly, radically. But even with these tools, there's a trap many encounter starting this journey: The idea that they need to become someone else, that they must change completely to achieve wholeness. Jung said the opposite. The purpose of individuation isn't to become a new person. It's to become the person you've always been but didn't know. And this brings us to the deepest part of this journey: integration, the moment the fragments begin to unify and your true identity emerges from the chaos. In the next part, we'll explore what integrating all aspects of the psyche means and how this not only heals, but liberates. If this resonates, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down core Jungian ideas and offers tools to understand yourself more deeply. The link's in the pinned comment. We've reached the most decisive point of this journey: integration. Everything we've covered, the soul's structure, the detours, the symptoms of disconnection, the tools to return, leads to this moment. The process where what's been fragmented begins to unite, where the lost pieces of your soul are gathered, where what you've repressed, hidden, shattered, finally harmonizes with your true self. But what does integration really mean? It's not about erasing what's uncomfortable. It's not about purging negative emotions or turning yourself into an idealized version. That's spiritual ego, just another persona disguised as enlightenment. Integration is radically accepting every part of your existence. It's understanding that light and shadow aren't enemies but complements. That weakness and strength don't cancel each other, they balance each other. That within you coexist the creator and the destroyer, the healer, and the wounded, the rebel and the complacent. Only by making space for all these inner voices can you find your true one. Jung saw individuation as the process of becoming yourself. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest tasks of existence, demanding courage to let go of what's comfortable, to shed identities that protected you for years, to stop seeking outside what can only be found within. Integration happens when you stop trying to be someone else and surrender to becoming whole. It begins with awareness, realizing you have a persona but aren't it. Seeing your shadow without letting it define you. Finding your anima or animus and learning to listen. Connecting with the self, not as an abstract idea, but as a living presence within. At this point, life ceases to be a battlefield of opposites and becomes a dialogue between parts. The impact is profound. Anxiety fades not because you've learned to control it, but because it no longer needs to scream for attention. Relationships grow authentic as you stop projecting your lacks onto others. Unconscious loops dissolve because someone's now at the helm, and that someone is you. Integration is healing, but not in a shallow sense. It mends the inner cracks from years of denial, avoidance, and adaptation. It rebuilds your bond with your soul. It's living with direction, not as someone chasing a specific destination, but as someone who knows where they come from. It transforms pain into strength, confusion into clarity, emptiness into fertile space. But don't misunderstand. This journey has no end. Integration isn't a destination. It's a continuous process, an endless dance between conscious and unconscious, known and mysterious. With each new life cycle, you become more whole, more authentic, more free. If something in this video moved you, if a word touched your soul, comment below. Tell me, where are you on this path? Which part of your soul feels like it's trying to come home? Your voice might be the start of someone else's listening. And if you've reached this point, don't stop. The next video continues this journey. It's as vital as this one. Sometimes a single idea can change your life. Keep watching. Your soul thanks you.